Today's angle on doing what you want to do and the way you want to do it is going to be based a little bit around these concepts like dignity and self worth, and the way that whether or not it's how we wish it ought to be or think it should be, we can't help but sometimes get ourselves kind of wrapped up in the work that we do with our identity. It's one of the things that can make criticism hard because we can feel like we're being personally attacked. It's one of the things that can make us kind of feel a sense of progress when we are building things and producing stuff and not necessarily even artifacts. Could be causing change around us. Could be having planted trees or having got policy changes or neighborhood association. Any variety of things that we can see our impact on the world as, we can wrap up some of our self-worth and identity in. And one of the powers that I want to emphasize that comes from doing things you want to do the way you want to do them, which again could take many various versions, right? It could be making music, and it doesn't matter what audience you don't have, it's that you make music. It could be dancing that you practice doing, even if you're not intending to have an audience or make TikTok videos or whatever. Things that you do for you. And what I like about them is going to take kind of a slightly dark turn momentarily, where I want you to think a little bit like horcruxes. Now, like I say, dark turn, not in the way that you gotta murder somebody to make one, because that's obviously not what I'm discussing here. But so much as there's this idea of I can take this thing that part of my kind of soul is in some sense of the word, and obviously I'm not trying to challenge any actual beliefs people have either. That's why I'm using a fantasy work here. But that I can take a part of myself and secure it in this piece that I can then better protect. And so if we zoom out, what I'm really getting at here, maybe I feel like I'm losing somebody out there. When I first started recording a bunch of episodes for my podcast, Gam Keto Community, back then it was called Game Devs Like You, I interviewed dozens of people around the world in different time zones, different lines of work, different types of game development experience. And I built a huge queue of those up front. So then months later, I was emailing these people like, hey, is it cool if I still release this episode that we did like a summer ago? Everybody, and I do mean everybody, who I had interviewed who was making games as a hobbyist, who was making games as a student, who was making games with a small team or on their own time on the side, or basically in the people who were making games the way they wanted and the way that they had control, even if it wasn't reaching a huge audience, even if it wasn't earning a bunch of money, even if it wasn't super flashy or spectacular or getting written about or discussed at conferences, those people all said, heck yeah, my interview is as good to go as ever. I'm still doing what I want to do. I'm still making the games I feel like making. Share my story if it's a little out of date. Whatever, they'll find it when we check out my website. The people I interviewed who had AAA jobs, AAA level design, large company artists, engineers at giant firms, far less so consistent. I mean, many of them were still fine. But a lot of them, by the time that it was ready to launch their interview, their career had taken a different direction. A couple had been laid off, in many cases, no fault of their own, just like an entire studio wiped out. A couple had pivoted to a different line of work. A couple had pivoted out of games into something that wasn't games that they felt paid them better or better benefits or whatever for the same type of skill background. And in their cases, they were a little less sure about it. They would be like, actually, you know what? I don't feel good anymore about that episode being out there. I don't want to, that's not how I think of myself or present myself. Or what had happened was that they had connected their sense of I make games into a way that a company or someone else, even customers, could take away from them. Do you see where I'm going now with the horcrux thing? Which again, without the murder aspect. The ones who had instead taken the thing that they liked to do because they found it fulfilling, because they found it expressive, because it was something that they just enjoyed doing, whether or not there was an audience for it, and then they did that thing, no one else could take that away. Didn't matter if their job changed. Didn't matter if the audience changed. They were still them. They were still doing that. They were able to still have some of their identity, their dignity and self-worth secure in this thing, which is still a skill they have, is still a thing they can do when and how they choose to. To tie it back a little bit to today's video, right, where newspaper reporter used to have to go through these layers of permission to get to do the thing. And sure enough, games were like that 2 decades ago, in many cases, where in order to make a game, it took such substantial resources and such unwelcoming technology, such tough access to learning barriers to be able to make a thing was non-trivial. Anymore, anybody can at least make a game. Obviously, again, this is obviously a difference if there's a huge studio, if there's a budget behind it, if people are connected to reporters and all kinds of stuff. But to just do it in the same way as anyone can sing a song, write a song, make poetry, draw a picture, do various things that we want to do, tell stories. At this point, if we want to do those things the way we want to do them, it's up to us. And one of the strengths in doing it, like I'm talking about here, is that then when we invest our sense of who I am in the work that we do, which again is challenges around that may not be exactly how we want things to be anyway, but we can't help but tie ourselves up in the work that we do, the things that we change around us, the efforts that we put out into the world around us, the organization we bring to the chaos that surrounds us. When we can bury that in a way that is no one else's to take away, because you can still be a public speaker, you can still be a storyteller, you can still be a game artist, you can still be a game programmer, you can still be a whatever you want to do, musician. When you tie it up into a way that is yours, it helps avoid someone else being able to drop out from underneath us, that our dignity and self-worth was built on somebody else's brand, some bigger institution, some larger structure, which A, we have no control over our connection to in the long term, and B, may not exist at all in the long term for factors beyond any one person's doing. So that's the thing today, that doing things how you want, the way you want, the things that you want, for who you want to do them, whom, can help give us a firmer foundation for our sense of dignity and self-worth. That's it for the day. I'll see y'all tomorrow.